Hey, HopeQuest family, Troy here with Melissa, and we're just so grateful to be with you this holiday season. And so before we do anything else, Merry Christmas. We are so grateful for what Jesus has done, what God did in sending Jesus, what Jesus did by living his life sin-free and going to the cross, and that is all what we celebrate at Christmas. But you know, with all the celebrating Jesus and the other stuff that comes with Christmas, the gifts and songs and decorations and food.
And family of origin.
And family of origin. And, you know, I love my parents. They may very well be possibly watching this. And so Mom, Dad, I love you guys. But my mom and my father both know that while I love them, sometimes we can trigger one another. And my mom and I just last night were having this conversation about how we trigger one another, and we kind of got in a fight arguing about who triggers the other the worst.
Yeah.
So you can imagine what that was like. But what Melissa and I wanted to talk about is, with all the joy and the fun and the excitement of Christmas, there's some challenges to navigate as you interact with family and as you spend time with people you genuinely love, that you genuinely care about, but you know, may trigger you and may make things challenging. And so anyway, we wanted to talk about some very practical things, really probably the next 2 weeks. And a huge shout out to Steve and Cindy. This content actually came from Steve and Cindy, Walking Free and Journey leaders extraordinaire, great friends of ours. Steve, Cindy, we love you guys. So this is their content that they've shared before in settings, helping folks just prepare for the holidays, mainly in their marriage ministry that they're so passionate about. But Melissa and I want to share 8 practical things that we can do to really navigate the holidays well, keep bringing glory to Jesus, and keep just having a very Merry Christmas, and not get off track in recovery, and not hurt those that we love, or hurt ourselves, or set back our recovery, or set back someone else's recovery. So, you know, Melissa, let's start with this before we get into Steve and Cindy's 8 points. Let's just start with, from your perspective, what's the biggest challenge for you personally in navigating the holidays?
You know, I think for me personally, when I go into my family of origin where I grew up, I become that kid again. And, you know, it's easy to slip back into those old patterns of relating. And so I have to be very intentional about reminding myself, hello, I'm an adult.
Right.
I don't sit down and let mom do everything for me. I don't expect certain things. It's really, it has to be an intentional choice,
right,
to recognize that I'm a different person when I'm not in this home.
Right.
And so many of us, it's like we walk in the door and all of a sudden all the old hurts, unresolved usually, all the ways we related to our parents are there, or our siblings, or difficult people in the family, and so we forget who we are.
Right.
We just forget. We forget that away from this, I relate differently.
Right.
And so for me, it's this discipline of intentionally remembering who I am when I walk through those doors.
Yeah, and for me, it's really just letting false beliefs, old hurts, expectations, letting all of that stuff kind of sneak up behind me and push me off track. And so it really is, for me, I have to be very intentional to navigate the holidays well, to love and honor those that I'm with, and to not get my recovery off track. So let's do this. Let's go through, and number one, there's 8 very practical things from Steve and Cindy here. We're going to cover 4 in this video. So number 1, be authentic. Be yourself. You are who you are, and I love, Melissa, what you said. You know, you are someone out here. Make sure you bring that someone into this new holiday setting that you're in. So talk to us a little bit about what it means to be authentic as we visit with others in the holidays.
So I think one of the things that, you know, we talk about in recovery so much is being courageous enough to being aware of your feelings and to express them appropriately. And somehow, some way, that goes offline often when we're family members. So instead of talking about our feelings like we do so well in our recovery groups, we talk about what we think. Right. So, and the thing in our minds is an old narrative, not just pressing the pause button and think, what am I feeling right now? Okay, I'm feeling anxious. Why am I feeling anxious? And expressing that appropriately, not falling back into old patterns of blowing up and lashing out to push people away to get some space, or not falling back in old patterns of just retreating and going silent, because that's the way I've always done it.
Or that pattern of putting on that happy face. You call it plastic fantastic. And, just pretending everything's okay when maybe it isn't okay. And we've got to, that's when we have tools. So that I feel about because tool and that ability to be aware of what's going on inside of me and express it appropriately allows me to be authentic, to be myself. And when I bring my true self to these relationships and to this time, there's a better chance of it going well than not.
Absolutely. And, recognizing, and we'll talk about this in the next segment, but recognizing we know our family members have not been in counseling, right? So they don't have these same tools. So recognizing that, for me to say, I feel anxious right now about this because we're probably going to get a shock and awe look from people. Or if we say, it's been a really difficult year. Thank you for praying for me. This is a really stressful event for me because I don't know how you're going to respond to me. I mean, that's a very authentic statement. And being prepared, going into it with some of those, like, how am I really feeling about going? And being authentic with myself, being honest with myself and others.
Because I remember, like our first Christmas with your family, after everything came out and after our recovery began, I was extremely anxious because I'm wondering, how angry are they at me? What are they thinking about me? Will they be nice to me? Will they take me out back and beat me up or shoot me? And I was very anxious, and being able to be honest about that with you was very, very helpful. And we'll talk a little bit more about what safe people are and that sort of thing. But be authentic, show up your true self, which leads us to number 2. And leads us to number 2 because I said the word show up. Number 2 is this: not only number 1, be authentic. Number 2, stay present. It is so easy when we get in a scary or difficult or overwhelming situation to check out. And that doesn't really help things. It doesn't engender the connection and the communication that we want to have. And it will kind of lead us down this road if we don't stay present, stay engaged. It's going to lead us down this road where we are going to get triggered, or we're going to make things worse. And so, Melissa, when I think about staying present, I think about how easy it is for me to, when I get overwhelmed or I'm uncomfortable, I have some predictable ways that I kind of avoid getting close to people, avoid intimacy, avoid connection because I'm afraid, overwhelmed, scared, intimidated, angry, frustrated, what have you. Talk to us a little bit about those intimacy avoiding behaviors and why it's important to be aware of them and avoid them.
So, we all have our strategies for dealing with anxiety. When we get triggered into our fight or flight mode, right? We have strategies for dealing with that. And some of them look really socially inappropriate. Right. And some of them look like just obnoxious habits.
Right.
So,
and some of them might actually look
and some of them actually like really sweet, actually. The one of them in particular. So the 4 that I think of that are most typical patterns are controlling. So moving into where I'm anxious, I'm going to start managing the environment and managing the people and managing the situation so that I feel like I'm in control and my anxiety goes down. Right.
But they feel controlled, and oftentimes they're going to push back or they're going to resist that, and now conflict comes.
Correct. Yeah. So, and this is what you do with your mother. You control to manage her anxiety. Right. So, the second one is retreat. Okay. So I'm just going to withdraw. So this is where I, just quietly fade into the background. I'm sitting on the sofa. No one even knows I'm there. I'm not engaged in conversation, because it's just easier not to engage. Right.
Or maybe even go in the other room and watch a football game, get on my iPad.
Exactly.
Not that I would ever do that.
No, not that you would ever do that.
Just talking theoretically, hypothetically.
A third and the last two are ones that I typically
Right.
do, and that is performing. So I'm gonna kick it up into try hard mode.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna be the one who is suggesting things and trying to get this whole family thing going. We're gonna play games. We're gonna
Or maybe serve others, and,
Yes,
and you're going to wash the
absolutely.
dishes. You're going to help serve dinner.
Right.
You're gonna do stuff that pleases and keeps everyone
Yes.
happy.
Performing is task oriented.
Yes.
Right? It's about doing the tasks. And then I don't have to relate to anyone.
Right.
And then the last one, also one of my faves, is pleasing people. So if I recognize that someone's upset or feeling left out, I go and try to make that okay.
Okay.
Right? So the four: controlling, retreating, performing, and pleasing. We all have our go-to
Kind of
strategies.
go-to strategies.
Right.
Is pleasing kind of like fix-it mode? Is that where you're going to try to fix a situation or fix someone, or is that more controlling? Or
Well, it really depends. Like
Right.
in my family, pleasing was about whoever is the angry person in the room,
Okay.
you do what you can to placate that anger.
Gotcha.
Right? That means you serve as a buffer, or you deflect with laughter. Maybe you become the class
Right.
clown or whatever. It's this whole idea that I'm trying to make sure the whole room
Yeah.
stays okay.
Exactly. And here's the thing. The reason these are important, the reason it's important to stay present, when you do these intimacy avoiding behaviors, on a good day, they simply avoid real intimacy and connection. On a bad day, they actually fuel conflict and mistrust and misunderstanding, and they actually kind of blow up on you and make things worse.
Right.
And so the best bet, if you will, if I could say it that way, is to actually be present. That's where we go back to number one as well. So if we're present and then we'll be authentic, now we can actually connect with those that we're there with. And there may be some challenging conversations. There may be some fun and light conversations. There may be some fun to be had. But if I don't stay present, and if I'm not bringing my authentic self, it's going to be very difficult, and there's going to be disconnection at worst or increased tension and conflict
at best. Or
All right,
worst.
so here we go. So we got number one, be authentic. Number two, stay present. Number three, have realistic expectations. Now, Melissa, we all know that in terms of realistic expectations, this is one of my real strengths. Because I typically come to a situation with very fair and realistic expectations.
And
correct?
very flexible expectations.
Exactly.
Right?
Not only are my expectations realistic, but they're very flexible. I mean, I rarely get this picture in my mind and rigidly latch onto that and really am devastated when it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So the reality is, we must have realistic expectations as we go into to these holiday encounters. And here's the thing: we can have overly positive, unrealistic expectations, but we can also have overly negative, unrealistic expectations. If I go into it with this, it's always been bad and it's just going to be bad this year as well. How is that helpful? So, Melissa, talk to us about how important it is and why it's important to have realistic expectations as we roll into relationships and opportunities to be with people.
So, one of the ways we cope with pain is to use a particular mindset or attitude to either brace ourselves. That would be going into with a negative, right? Like, okay, I'm just not gonna expect anything. That way, when it doesn't happen, I'm not disappointed, right? Or we get trapped in magical thinking, fantasy thinking, longing, like we long for a relationship and we hope it can be different this year. And so there's a lot of anxiety going in because I so want it to be different, but I don't have any power over that.
Right.
So realistic expectations say that I am going into this with actually my mind clearly focused on what is, not what I want and not what I'm afraid of.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes sense. So I'm not going to be overwhelmed by what I'm afraid of, but I'm not going to demand that it go exactly like I need it to go. I'm just going to kind of go with
open hands.
Hey, I'm here.
Right.
I want to connect. I want to have a good time.
And the reality is, realistically, for instance, we know our parents struggle with different things, right? My mom and your mom struggle with anxiety. My mom is quiet when she's anxious. Your mom is activated when she's anxious. that's not going to change.
Right.
They're going to be anxious around the holidays.
Right.
So there's nothing I can do to assuage that anxiety. I have to just realistically know it's going to be there.
Right.
Right? And so when I think about this realistic expectations, basically I am setting myself up to live in the moment.
Right.
And therefore, whatever, it opens me up to have access to my tools. Right? So that if something goes wrong, I'm not shocked by that.
Right.
And I use my IFABs or I set a boundary. If I am caught up in my longings, I will get frozen or so disappointed that I won't be able to use my tools. Or if I'm caught up in my skepticism, then I'm just going to be angry and no one's going to want to be around me.
Right.
So making sure that I have a realistic picture of what to expect. Right. My folks, my sisters, my brothers, they've not been in therapy. They don't have tools.
Right.
So recognizing that and not holding it against them when they respond in predictable ways, but managing my own recovery and using my tools because I have them.
Well, and I think that's a big part of the realistic expectations piece is, I'm expecting them not to be perfect. And if I'm not careful, I'll expect them to be perfect. I tend to sometimes be hypervigilant to begin with. And so when I go in looking for failure and demanding perfection, I will find it. I will find failure and I will miss perfection and I will react in a negative way that will actually make things worse, not better.
Right.
So have realistic expectations. Be gracious. Don't be overly afraid, but don't be overly skeptical. But don't demand perfection. Just have realistic expectations. And then number 4, Melissa, is an important one for us. And we're not going to spend much time here because we need to wrap up because you have important things to do. But number 4 is this: make an effort to be more physically active. Make an effort to be more physically active. What on earth do we normally do around the holidays, more so than we do the rest of the year? We eat. Lots of food.
And lots.
We eat things we don't normally eat.
Yes.
So maybe sweets and sodas and things of that sort. We have got to be moderate in how we do that and make sure that we're being physically active and make sure that we're drinking lots of water. So Melissa, real quick, tell us why it's important to make an effort.
So this is basic self-care, right? So when normally around the holidays, we give ourselves a lot of permissions.
Yes.
Right? We get our permissions to eat things we normally don't eat. Alcohol may be involved, and alcohol is never our friend.
Never.
When we're navigating emotional triggers. Never, ever. And so here's the thing. If I give myself permission in things I don't normally give myself permission, that is a slippery slope for recovery.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm outside of my structure that I normally use to keep my thoughts and my behaviors structured in a healthy way.
And my environment safe.
And my environment safe, right? So making sure, being mindful of the fact that just because it's the holidays doesn't give me permission, right, to lose the structure that I need in my life for recovery. And the other thing about it is when we are overeating, not hydrating, not exercising, that impacts our brain clarity. It impacts the way we think. So it's actually really healthy to move in the holidays, do my regular routine as much as possible.
Get that brain flowing, get that serotonin and dopamine working so that I can make good, wise decisions, so that I can be authentic, stay present, and have realistic expectations. So those are our 4 things. And again, be authentic, stay present, have realistic expectations, and make an effort to be physically active. We've got 4 more, and I say these 4 more are really, really, really good, but we are out of time. So for now, again, Merry Christmas. I hope you'll come back next week and join in Melissa and I as we talk about the final 4 things that Steve and Cindy have suggested to help us navigate the holidays with freedom and hope and life. And just know that Melissa and I are incredibly grateful for you. And thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your generosity. Have a great week, and we look forward to hanging out again next week.